Bases dropped on the morning show here on the SDH Network. John here, you there. We got a lot of ground to cover here in the next 2+ hours because you know that on a day like this, we're going to be going longer than 11:05. Thanks for hanging out with us here on a Friday. There's a lot of stuff to get into from yesterday that went into draws and things, and we'll get into that and math and all those other kinds of elements. Then also in hour number 2, we get you set for the weekend in Major League Soccer. Jason, I think, is going to be joining us around 10:30 as he is juggling looking at Atlanta United's practice before they head up I-85 to take on Charlotte. And there's the weekend whip around to get into with all the news in Major League Soccer to get into. We got to talk about Atlanta United, too, because there's a matchup in Chattanooga that is probably must win as you're at this point of the season in MLS Next Pro. That's on Sunday. So there's a lot to get into this morning. The European window, 11 o'clock London time tonight. So if I'm not mistaken, that's 6 o'clock our time, 6 o'clock Eastern. So all of the moves that have happened this morning, all the talk that's happened this morning, all the stuff that happened with competitions yesterday, the draws that were there, the math that's involved, and news in and around all of that. So there's some suspensions in Major League Soccer that we've got to remind folks of heading into the weekend. So there's a lot to play with here as we go this morning. Morning, Alex. Morning, Abby. It is a 5-Stripe Friday. So once again, getting into – I'm going to go ahead and just start the runway. So as we get into this matchup with Charlotte this weekend with Atlanta United 2, I want to know what's on your mind. I want to know what you're looking for. I want to know what you're looking forward to. I want to know what you're looking at. I want to know what else is on your mind. So that's what the Twitch pitch is for. So go ahead and line up your thoughts in the Twitch pitch, and we'll get into that as we get into hour number 2. Also in hour number 2, I'm going to start hour number 2 off with a part of the conversation that Jason had with Garth Lagerwey and with Demetrius Destathiou in the front office with Atlanta United. Very, very rare that you have these kinds of conversations. And this conversation that Jason had with Garth and Demetrius going for, if you take out the advertisement, say 45 minutes. Because there was like a big 3-minute chunk and another 3-minute chunk and then some air at the end. So if you go, so basically a 45-minute conversation that Jason had with 2 of the guys who are in the room when it happens, when it comes to transfers. And that's part of the conversation that we're going to play starting hour number 2. And I want you to go to the Off the Woodwork section at 92.9 The Game and listen to the whole conversation because there's a lot that they cover in that 45 minutes plus ads that are dropped in the middle. They talk about transfer windows. They talk about the challenges of what it's like in modern day big boy business soccer to try and get after transfers and all the math that's involved and the rules that are involved and the rules of engagement that are there with Atlanta United being a player on the world stage. And so we're going to play a little bit of that conversation having to do with transfer windows and having offset windows from the rest of the planet, the challenges that are there. And it's the first half of a longer conversation that Jason had about this particular topic with Garth and Demetrius. So we're going to play about 2 minutes of that conversation to start hour number 2 and lead you into like I said, it's very rare that you have front office folks that high up in the ladder open the door and sit there and say, okay, here's what we're looking at. It's a conversation that dealt with AM and the new parts of AM that are going to be on the table, why Atlanta United chose the 2DP 4U22 model for this season only. It gets into those decisions and that longer discussion. Like I said, it's about a 45-minute conversation that Jason had with Garth and Demetrius. Go to the Off the Woodwork section at 92.9 The Game in the Odyssey app. Listen to it, and it's a great education, but I wanted to play a little bit of it in the 10 o'clock hour leading into Jason coming in at 10:30 so we can talk about that as well and that conversation and anything else that Jason would earmark that is a part of why listen to something like this from very important front office personnel in Major League Soccer, not just here in Atlanta, but in Major League Soccer, and understand where they are going in transfer windows and what they have to tackle with all the rules and things like that. So we're going to start hour number 2 with that, and we will go with that conversation to lead weekend whip around, patent pending, trademark coming sooner, hopefully, rather than later. So there's a lot to play with when it comes to the show this morning. So, okay. Yes, Abby, thank you. So Abby is doing your favorite your favorite divine intervention work by posting the link in the Twitch pitch. So go listen to the whole thing. If you haven't, go listen. But like I said, we're going to play a little bit of it starting in hour number 2, having to do with transfer windows and dealing with the mix and the offset of the U.S. window and the European window as a part of leading into hour number 2. So let's see. It is a one season at a time thing. The 2 and 4, the 3 and 3, Abby, yes, it is a one season at a time thing. And so that's why they chose this season to do the 2 and the 4, because then you get additional AM to play with if something happens. And so you have that additional, you have the additional AM that's prorated. Initially, it would have been $2 million under the new system, but because you got it at the halfway point, it's an extra $1 million in AM. So all these different things. So yes, go listen to that conversation, just not right now. But we'll play a little bit of it in hour number 2 and get into what it's like to be in the room and have all of this stuff broken down for you. Like I said, very, very rare that Jason got to have this conversation with Garth and Demetrius of Thought to You. So very, very cool that he got to do it. Like I said, it's about 45 minutes long, and then with ads, it's 53. But Abby has done fantastic work in clicking the link, throwing it in the Twitch pitch. So listen to it, but we're going to play a little bit of it in the 10 o'clock hour to kind of get you warmed up for the weekend and the preview. And Jason, when he comes in around, say, 10:30 or so, and we put out the bat signal to other folks, and we'll see who can answer the bat signal this morning when it comes to everything going on in a very, very busy week and a very, very busy weekend. As once again, Atlanta United gets ready for a trip up 85 North to go check out what's going on in Charlotte. Okay, opening kickoff brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. There's your QR code for those of you who are watching. However you're watching us this morning, unless you're listening to us live, however you listen to us live, soccerdownhere.net or the SDH app on Spreaker. Use that QR code. You click on that from our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com, and you get into start your day with Kickoff Coffee. Notice how I didn't use kick off your day with Kickoff Coffee, but I did just there. So anyway, start your day with our friends at Kickoff Coffee. Don't forget to use the code SoccerDownHere15 when you check out. You get 15% off your purchase. They, in turn, take 10%, reinvest it in youth games, youth initiatives. Very, very cool stuff from our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. As I sit here and try and block out our Alliance Nurse Corps QR code temporarily, because I don't want you chasing after coffee. And then unless you want to know about the benefits of nursing as a career, that's why I put the hands over the second QR code. We'll get into that in a bit. Okay, so opening kickoff brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee. The question is, and it has to do with transfers and such. When is a transfer maybe not a transfer? And for that, we go to Turkey. Andros Townsend, basically in an interview with Harry Latham Coyle at The Independent, quote, "I don't know who owns me." So Andros Townsend last season got picked up by Luton Town. Great pickup by them to have that kind of experience to help them in their push to try to stay in the Premier League. They just fell short. They're back in the Championship. So Andros Townsend was trying to find a new home after last season. Right now, he is in transfer purgatory, for lack of a better phrase. He is an unperson, if you want to talk about things in an Orwellian sense. So he leaves Luton Town after last year. Now he is supposed to be, in theory, in the printed word, he is supposed to be with a club in Turkey, Antalyaspor. And he signed a contract with him. He has signed a contract with Antalyaspor. But his move to Antalyaspor came after FIFA imposed a transfer ban on the Super League side in Turkey. Super League. So he can train. He signed a contract. He's able to train with them, but he can't be officially announced as a player on the roster or feature in matches. He has been told the deal will be officially confirmed as soon as possible. But right now, Andros Townsend is an unperson. He's kind of hanging out in Turkey, working out with a team, signed a contract, but he can't be activated. Interview with BBC 5 Live's Monday Night Club. Quote, I'm stuck in Antalyaspor just training. I don't know who owns me. I don't know where my contract is. I've had a crazy couple of weeks. 3 days before the start of the season at Luton, I get a phone call from Antalyaspor saying, we have an offer for you, but you've got 24 hours to respond because we've got a transfer ban coming, and we need to get you in before the transfer ban. No time to think about it. I managed to negotiate to be involved in the first game for Luton, then it was literally all signed and all done. We missed the deadline by a couple of hours. I saw that quote, and then that was when the spidey senses went off. The contract is signed, but they can't officially register me. They can't announce me because they have a transfer ban. Every time I ask them, they say, the contract is signed, you're our player, but nothing has been announced. 2 years at Everton before he was at Luton last season. Luton wanted to keep him. Townsend was certain that a move to the town in Turkey and to the team in Turkey was the right decision. There were so many red flags you wouldn't believe it, he said. But something was telling me this is the right move for me to go and experience something new in Antalya, which is a beautiful city right near the beach. Something was telling me to make it happen. Had great conversations at Luton. They wanted me to stay, but they were supportive of what I wanted to do. I made the decision, I thought, to move out here. Honestly, I have no idea what's happening and what's going to happen. I keep getting told tomorrow. Every time I ask what's happening, they say, don't worry, you're our player. You're contracted to us. You can't go anywhere. I'm just here. So Andros Townsend, right now, he's an unperson. You sign a deal, but in the article where he says we missed the deadline by a couple of hours, and I'm like, oh, okay. That to me was the gigantic red flag in all of this. The gigantic red flag. We missed the deadline by a couple of hours, so that to me means you missed the deadline. You got in after the transfer ban kicked in. Like I said, that's just me. When I saw that quote, I'm like, yep, I think you're in trouble. So for the moment, Andros Townsend's kind of hanging out at the beach in Turkey, waiting for something to be overturned that I don't think is going to get overturned, but that's just me. So that's opening kickoff. Keep an eye on the unperson on days like today, because this being the end of the transfer window in most of the European nations, you're going to have those weird and wild elements of all of the car part, the car driveway interviews while you're waiting at the gate to either get in for a medical or get out for a medical. The players, you got all the folks right there at the gate that can't get into the facility. They're, all the camera lights are on, all the microphones are out. They see who's coming in a car. You have those moments. You had the one moment in the one transfer window, maybe a decade ago, where the one player thought he was being transferred from his old team to a new team. No word that this was happening, but he was in the parking lot of the new club that he wanted to go to when nothing was happening. So you could have your car park days. You could have your gated element days with the news crew. You could have those interviews today. Or you could be Andros Townsend, and you could be an unperson. So that's where we are. Abby is wondering if the contract is null and void because it was not before the deadline. I'm sure that Andros Townsend has a case for it. But right now, he's just hanging out. He's just hanging out right now. It's like he wanted to move to Turkey, but he himself admitted in that article of The Independent, yeah, we missed the deadline by a couple of hours, and I think you're in trouble. either you're going to stay and you got a signed contract, but I think since the signed contract happened after the transfer ban, I think you can go back to England if you want. And I'm sure that our friends at Luton would love to have you. Andros Townsend. Sounds like a country song. So, yeah, that's opening kickoff. Brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. Once again, there's your QR code for those of you who are watching. However, you're watching us this morning right there. It is either on the Twitch, on the YouTubes, or on the 280-character app. Use that QR code to get to Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. Use the code SoccerDownHere15 at checkout. You get 15% off your purchase. They, in turn, take 10%, reinvest it in youth games, youth initiatives that are cool, as our friend Carlito would say. Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. All right. Now, the other QR code from our friends at Alliance Nurse Corps, as I bring it front and center. If you or anyone you know is either in a nursing career and want to pursue other elements of said nursing career, or if you want to dive into a nursing career, our friends at Alliance Nurse Corps have over 30 years of experience in finding the right nursing career for you. If you're hopping in for the first time, or if you're wanting to explore what else can be out there for you in the careers in nursing, hit that QR code from our friends at Alliance Nurse Corps. And when you get to that QR code, a question will pop up as a part of your review, and they will ask, how'd you hear about us? Then what you do is you sit there and go, SDH, yo. I don't know if you can get that into like one word or if you have to do some spacing, but just tell them Soccer Down Here. And it reminds them that you are looking for a career in nursing or looking for something else inside your career in nursing. Our friends at Alliance Nurse Corps, great sponsors, are great friends with us here at SDH. I know a lot of you have been talking in the Twitch pitch this morning about Johnny Gaudreau and his brother, and it is tremendously sad about what happened. Johnny Hockey lost to us at the age of 31. His brother Matthew at 29, hit by a car while they were biking, and it is the weekend of their sister's wedding, and so they were in New Jersey for that event. Hit by a car, and it has come out this morning that the driver who killed Johnny Gaudreau and his brother suspected of being intoxicated, charged with death by auto. And so just keep all those that you love in your thoughts always. Don't ever be afraid to tell anyone how you feel. Don't ever be afraid to tell anybody that you love them. Don't ever be afraid to tell anybody what's on your mind, what's in your heart, and what's in your soul. Sadly, it's days like this when you lose tremendous players and tremendous individuals in the U.S. hockey landscape, like a Johnny Gaudreau, like Johnny Hockey. We're sadly reminded about how short life really is. But yeah, death by auto apparently is now part of the charge with the driver involved in the case. And so we'll keep an eye on that once again, as we all go, as we are fans of sport. But yeah, truly sad news out of hockey this morning that Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew gone way too soon after an accident while they were biking last night. Johnny Gaudreau, 31, Matthew Gaudreau, 29. And so obviously, like I said, keep them in your thoughts, keep the hockey community in your thoughts, and keep everyone in your circle in your thoughts. So yeah, that was not pleasant to go through late last night and then waiting for independent confirmation this morning. Statements out from the Blue Jackets, statements out from the National Hockey League, and the story is now making the rounds as we go. Okay. Yesterday, it was intriguing to say the very least. With the new draw in the Champions League. Short and sweet, I still have no blanking clue what I was staring at yesterday. I have no clue. No idea. It was in Monaco yesterday. Gigi Buffon, CR39, they were all part of CR39 hit a button 36 times. He hit the button 36 times yesterday. And so now we know where folks are, what their 8 matches are. We don't know the order. We just know who's a home and who's an away. You end up Liverpool and Real Madrid, AC Milan, and 20th anniversary season of Liverpool's 2005 triumph. You end up with Aston Villa hosting Bayern Munich at some point. They're also going to take on Juve and Celtic as a part of their 8-match deal. Manchester City paired with Inter, who they beat in their treble-winning campaign over a year ago. Villa's draw and RB Leipzig were the two that were really staring out at people after yesterday. So apparently here's the format as it was explained. And I'm still like, I have no idea. I have no blanking clue about this stuff. So as it is being explained, number of teams increasing from 32 to 36, 4 seeding pots of 9. Then teams play 8 games in the group stage after being drawn against 2 different teams from every pot, either match being a home and away. So 4 different pots, 4 different levels. I mean, think of it like you're staring at the group stage and you know that somebody's going to go 0-3, like Sheriff Tiraspol. And then you look at a Shakhtar Donetsk. There's news about them. They might be in a pot C. They might be in the 3rd pot. And then, maybe our buddies from Club Brugge or something like that. They might be in 3, and 2, it might be Atalanta or something like that. And then you get your heavyweights in pot 1. So 2 different teams every pot, either match home and away. Then 1 through 8 to the last 16, 9 through 24. After your 8 matches are played, the top 8 automatically qualify for the knockouts. 9 through 24 are ranked. Then they get into a 2-leg playoff. 25 through 36 head straight to the Europa League. Then, as it is explained, the winners from the playoffs then go back into the last 16, and you're drawn against 1 through 8. My head's already exploding. Then, after that, you're into the round of 16 knockouts, and the knockout stage continues following the normal format leading to the final at the neutral venue. So Arsenal's probably happy. City looks like they're going to be okay. Liverpool's probably going to get through. Villa, they got some fun that they got to play with. So the draw, Arsenal, PSG at home, away at Inter, home to Shakhtar, at Atalanta, home to Dinamo Zagreb, away to Sporting, and we can talk to Nino about Sporting all day long, home to Monaco, and at Girona. Villa gets the repeat of the 82 European Cup final with Bayern Munich at Villa Park. At Leipzig, home to Juve, at Bruges, home to Celtic, at Young Boys, home to Bologna, and at Monaco. Liverpool, home to Real Madrid, at Leipzig, home to Leverkusen, at Milan, home to Lille, at PSV, home to Bologna, at Girona. Manchester City, home to Milan, Inter Milan, at PSG, home to Bruges, at Juventus, home to Feyenoord, at Sporting Lisbon, home to Sparta Prague, at Slovan Bratislava. That's pretty easy. Short of the PSG match, they should be able to take care of business. I'm thinking 7-0-1. So that math is where we are, and that's how it was explained yesterday. I'm still confused about it, but what the hell? You had the Europa League draw this morning, and that one is got its own bits of interest with the Spurs, etc. But the one I wanted to tell you about was Shakhtar Donetsk. Get this. Shakhtar is keeping their travel plans secret after their team hotel got bombed days before their stay. They were supposed to stay in a hotel in Kryvyi Rih, which is a very heated zone for bombing by Russian military forces. They were going to stay there, but that hotel was destroyed in a Russian missile strike. Ben Rumsby in Monte Carlo now is saying that Shakhtar is going to keep all of their travel plans secret. And there's a documentary over at Paramount Plus, if you have the time to watch it. Football Must Go On. It's about Shakhtar, and they're continuing to play in the Ukrainian Premier League, continuing to play while the stuff is going on in the Eastern Frontier. The hotel in Creevy destroyed by a missile strike on Monday that killed at least 2 people, left several more trapped or injured. Sergei Palkin, who flew to Monte Carlo to attend the draw, told Telegraph that the missile strike was catastrophic. Now they're trying to find some kind of safe place, Palkin's quote, for the team to stay this weekend. He says, quote, I know a place, the name of a hotel, but I can't even tell you it because I don't want to have any manipulation. Keeping silent is better for us in the moment. 9:30 on a Friday. And this is where we get to catch up with our friends from Beyond Goals Mentoring. And we get to catch up with our mogul in training and find out what's going on with life at Rhode Island FC. Stadium being built, draws turning into wins, mogul in training, learning how to mogul. That's how we roll on a Friday. We'll see how long we can catch up with this particular gentleman because there's a special intro that goes with it, and here it is. Cap, what up?
What's up, John? Good morning.
Morning. All right. So the lid is what the lid is. We see it right there. The Rhode Island FC lid. And let's see. So how long do we have you this morning? Do you have a golf game that you have to get to? Are you going to be schooling people on the golf course this morning?
I'm not. I'm all in this morning.
Sweet. Okay. Very cool. All right. So Rhode Island FC update. And once again, as we always sit here and say, right there in the office, right there over the shoulder. It is, yes, clean off the lens. Right there, as always, it is the Rhode Island FC scarf right there, as always. And so we have to have it front and center as a part of our backdrop here at Office HD.
Love it.
The draws or wins. You're fighting for the playoff spot in a wacky Eastern Conference. So what's it like staring at the stretch run for Rhode Island FC from your off-field perspective? How many nails have you been nibbling? Are you down to the nubs? Are you down to your knuckles as the run-in is happening? What's going on?
No, not that nervous yet. It's exciting to be a part of it for sure because, 8 weeks ago, we were not in a very good place. So, yeah, it's been fun and it's tight. I think between 4th place and 9th place, I think is 5 points, maybe 6 now or something.
Yep.
But last weekend, if we won versus a loss, we were anywhere from 4th to 9th. And so, yeah, it's pretty crazy. And yeah, we're playing all the teams right around us right now. Last weekend, who did we have? Jeez, we went and played away against Loudon
United. There you go. In the DC suburbs, yes.
Almost unjustly lost that game.
Oh, what happened, sir?
We pretty much dominated the game, and they had a penalty kick called against us in the 92nd minute.
Oh,
a devastating loss, but our goalkeeper came up big and saved it because the ball doesn't lie, John.
Ball don't lie.
And so we took that tie, and now we play Birmingham this weekend up at our place. So they're one of the teams that's right in the mix. So yeah, it's and then they play in Pittsburgh next weekend, and I hope to drive over and see that because it's only a couple hours away from me.
Mm-hmm. And that was why you signed your keeper as your first large signing, was it not?
That's right.
You had to make sure that your buddy Coque Vegas, he was making sure that he was going to make sure that nothing got behind him when it came to what's going on with Rhode Island FC. So for those that have not been keeping up, and why haven't you? Why in the hell haven't you been keeping up with Rhode Island FC? Because I mean, every week, look, we have programming that we do week in review stuff on USL Championship, League One, MLS Next Pro, and so it is a part of the discussion when we go through the standings. But right now, Rhode Island 7-5-13, 13 draws in 25 matches. You're batting almost 500. You're batting 520 with draws because you had so many draws early on. Everybody was sitting there going, "Yeah, it's Draw FC up there in Rhode Island." 34 points, and you've got it's +4 in goal difference right now, and their tiebreakers are different. It's not like wins first and head-to-head. The tiebreakers are a little out there, but you got the tiebreaker right now on Loudoun. You're 7th in the Eastern Conference, and you've only lost once in your last 5. So you're 1-1-3 in your last 5 as you are now north of the playoff bar in the sprint that is now the run-in. And so keep an eye on Rhode Island FC, people, because Michael's going to come after you if you don't. The run-in in general. Right now, we're through Leagues Cup. In Major League Soccer, the other tournaments are behind, and so now it is a run-in for everyone in Major League Soccer. Atlanta United right now is part of the chaos in the Eastern Conference where 7 teams are separated by 2 points. You thought as a mogul you had it tight? The Eastern Conference in Major League Soccer, 7 teams, 2 points to get into the 9 spot. When it comes to the run-in in general, how do you keep your wits about you as a professional trying to focus on the task at hand and not look at all of the noise going on around you with only a certain number of matches left? Right now it's 8, but at the run-in in general, how do you keep your wits about you?
Yeah, it's tough. I think it's easy to say, just focus on your own games and your own performances and take care of your own business and don't worry about what else is going on. And yeah, absolutely, you try and do that. But of course, you're checking the other scores too, right? You want to see how much cushion do you have, where do you need to fight, who's staying in it, who's not. Right? You're checking out the other scores and the highlights every week, so you're aware of it. At least most guys are. But in the end, it is, hey, it doesn't matter if these teams are losing or winning if you're not winning, right? Every now and then you get lucky, like Rhode Island last weekend. We don't win, but unfortunately, a bunch of the teams right around us, they don't win either. And so, of course, then, it's nice to see it and recognize that. But, Atlanta's in a spot now where, hey, they kind of control some things, and they're in a decent spot, considering, I think if you pulled the fan base, you'd assume that we were in dead last place.
Yeah.
So, as disappointing as the season's been, the playoffs are right there, and it takes a good run. And I know that, maybe the spirits aren't so high and confidence isn't so high from the fan base right now, but that aside, it's still right there.
And the chaos that's attached to the final 8 matches. Rivalry coming up this weekend as they go up I-85 to go take on Charlotte. And you get to add that dynamic to this whole thing about the rivalry games. And so nothing like focusing on yourself, looking around you at all the chaos that's going on, trying to focus on your job. You've got a rivalry game as your first one of 8 in the run-in. So you're having to sort through all of this information and make sure that you're okay Monday through Friday on the practice pitch to get everything going for the game plan on the weekend. I mean, I'm asking this just because there's a lot of chainsaws that you got to juggle here as a professional athlete when it comes to a run-in. And that's why I wanted to ask about, how do you keep your wits about you and all the focus and all that kind of stuff? And yeah, focus on yourself, but knowing that all the noise is out there. How long did it take you as a professional athlete to sit there and go, okay, I can compartmentalize things and only control what I can control?
Yeah, it takes some time. I think that it's normal for younger athletes to, be concerned with a lot of stuff that's out of their control, and what fans think about them, what other players think about them, what's going on in other games, and a lot of this stuff. Right? I remember when I was a young professional, big soccer forums.
Last Tuesday is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Going on there to read stuff every now and then. And, eventually you just get to the understanding of like, hey, I don't know, this could be a 12-year-old kid talking about my performance. Why do I care?
12-year-old running smack on a CompuServe message board.
Yeah. So, I think it takes some time to just focus in on what you can do and what you can control. And it's easier said than done sometimes. It is. We're curious, I think, usually. And sometimes that's okay, as long as it doesn't go overboard.
When it comes to the student athlete and the young athlete of today, are they better at compartmentalizing than we were when we were their age? Are they just different about compartmentalizing? Do they still have the same issues? Do those conversations come up about making sure that they can focus on themselves when it comes to you and Greg mentoring? How does the modern day student athlete look at handling noise?
Yeah, I think it's similar. I mean, there's probably more noise nowadays than there was when I was growing up, just because of social media and everything's on video now, and these guys have game film of their own games and other games and things, which is phenomenal. But it does probably bring more noise and more ability to hear noise and see noise that we, I guess, for our betterment, we couldn't even hear if we wanted to. So, but I think the reaction to it is still the same. You're dealing with teenagers who most of the time we're dealing with teenagers who, that's a tough time as we're growing older, and you really care about what other people think about you and how you look and how you play, and you want to fit in and all those things, and all that stuff is still the same. And some players, just like back in our day, some people handle it better than others. And so, like I said, we just focus on what we can control and trying to get that into their heads of, hey, worrying about this other stuff. It's usually more fearful to worry about it than it actually is, right? The anticipation is worse than the actual event. And, these thoughts are usually worse than what they're actually thinking about you. So, it's a constant though. And it's challenging. I think back to me as a teenager, it's not easy.
So last Tuesday for you, when you were handling criticism, it wasn't easy for you. It's what you're saying. So from one week to the next, you've kind of shaken it off, and everything's cool.
A lot of growth in those 7 days.
There you go. And I wanted to ask about that with the modern day student athlete and what you and Greg are doing, because I don't know how different the conversations are, from the adult to the student athlete these days, because I don't know how differently you have to handle things considering how parents might react. Do you are you and Greg? Let me phrase it this way: how matter of fact are you and Greg when it comes to mentoring your student athletes? Because I mean, do they want to hear it flat out that this is wrong and this needs fixing? I mean, how do you handle it diplomatically and still get the message across, or are you more heavy-handed, even-handed? How do you and Greg handle this as your approach when you're talking to the modern day student athlete?
Yeah, I think for me, try and get a very quick gist of what's going on. How high of a level athlete are we talking about? What's the family dynamic? How involved are the parents? And that stuff usually is pretty apparent pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so some of the matter of fact will depend on those factors, right? If we're dealing with a not high level athletes, you'd be a little softer in the tone and more confidence building and more hopeful in some of the messaging.
Yeah.
But if we're dealing with an athlete who wants to go to D1, who's, not playing there, we try and talk about, hey, there are other options and there's other pathways. And that doesn't mean you can't make it, because look at Wondolowski and look at Kai Kamara and look at Justin Miram. And, there's all these other pathways. And, so we try and be as forthright as we can be without killing anyone's confidence, because that's the opposite of what we want to do.
And today's the modern day approach when it comes to chasing after that next level, it doesn't have to be a Division I kind of a thing. It can be it can be a Cal State Dominguez Hills if you're a Kai Kamara. It can be a D2, a D3, an NAIA. You can go to a different country and go through the lower divisions there. You can go about things differently than just that pathway that we're locked into of, say, like in American football. Okay, D1 college, you've got to go Power 5, and then you go to the NFL. There are different ways to go about it these days than there were last Tuesday when you were a professional athlete.
For sure. And there's a beauty about that. And it's so much easier now with the way that college is set up as far as transferring. And so there's even more pathways and more options out there where if you can go to D3, D2 and do well for a season or two, it's much easier to move on and go to a D1 school then and get an opportunity there. But like I said, there's still options to go pro even from a D3 or D2 school.
Mm-hmm. When you're even-handed in your criticism, do you find that your mentees, they welcome that matter of factness? Do they want to hear? Do they want to hear it like that? Do they accept it and go, or they sit there and go, okay, yeah, it's like, man, all right, I didn't realize that. Do they have? How do they handle it? Do they want it laid out for them like that most of the time? Do they want to hear the critics like, man, you got to work on this? Do they want to hear it like that?
Yeah, sometimes yes, and sometimes no. I have one mentee who doesn't want to go to college, wants to play, but he doesn't have any options right now. And I've been trying to tell them that you need to go to college. There's not too many options for 18, 19-year-olds who finished high school that aren't in an MLS Next program. Where are you going to play? What are you going to do outside of League Two in the summer? Maybe there's not a ton of options. So, but they don't want to hear it, and so I can tell them, but now it's on their choice. So sometimes they do want to hear it, sometimes they don't. I'm going to tell them in the beginning, regardless, and then I can go from there depending on the reaction and how they are taking things.
Halftime with Michael Parkhurst here on the Friday Free Kick and our friends at Beyond Goals Mentoring at MF Parkhurst on the 280 character app, at BG Mentoring on the 280 character app, and on Insta and Beyond Goals Mentoring on the web as well. And I mean, when I was 17, 18, 19, 35, 36, 42, 87 years old, there's a certain amount of pigheadedness that we all have because we have faith in our abilities, and it might be too much faith, and you need that wake up call, like in Grosse Point and Blank when Minnie Driver slaps John Cusack and kind of snaps him out of it, one of those kind of things. How confident is today's mentee for you? Are they confident? Are they overconfident? Do they need to be reintroduced to reality sometimes? How confident are they when you interact with them initially?
Yeah, there's definitely some players and parents who've got blinders on. I think more often I come across a too confident parent than I do a too confident mentee. And maybe that's because the too confident mentees are not mentees because they don't think they need it. So I don't encounter a ton of them, definitely some. But we talk about a lot, right? There is a fine line between confidence and arrogance,
Yes.
and towing it is okay, and dipping your toe into the arrogant side is needed sometimes, right? This is guys, like Joseph Martinez and Clint Dempsey, they towed it, and it's what made them really, really good. So we need to tow it, and you need to have that supreme confidence. And so I'm okay with a lot of it. But, just making sure that we're still good teammates and we're still putting in the work and willing to do the things that are needed to be done. So that is always a conversation, especially with players who already have that confidence or teetering with overconfidence into arrogance.
That to me sounds like a very fine line, because of confidence being one thing, and confidence can be that massive positive that can get you to that line of being overconfident and arrogant. And then if you step over that line and you're arrogant, then you have your teammates wondering about you, and then you've got to figure out, I guess, either through yourself or maybe even through others, where they've got to grab you by the back of the jersey and bring you back over that line. I mean, that sounds like that is one of the most difficult lines, I would think, as an athlete, that you've got to manage, that line of of being overconfident and confident and being arrogant and cocky and all of that. That seems like that's got to be the most fine line to navigate, that you have to talk about to mentees and then navigate as a professional.
For sure. And it's okay to cross over that line a little bit more when you're on the field. When you're off the field, right, you want to be on the, you for sure don't want to be over the line, right? Any little part of over the line has to be on the field, and your abilities on the field, and so confident that you're going to be crushing things. And if you want to talk a little bit out there and that type of stuff, and that comes across as arrogance, so be it, right? As long as it gets you up and gets you focused and playing your best, okay, right? But off the field, we don't want to cross that line for sure, because yeah, you're right. It does. It affects teammates and their view of you. It affects coaches. And we don't want to be that way in society in general, right? There's too many people like that. And it's not becoming at all.
Because don't you, as that athlete, you've got to be just as equally self-aware, I would think, that I'm crossing over the line. I'm doing it on purpose. I have the wherewithal inside of me to pull myself back and turn it on and turn it off, and turn it on when I need to and turn it off when I'm supposed to. I would think that you've got to be one of the most massively self-aware folks out there as a professional athlete, regardless of who you are. Okay, on the field, I'm this person. And then be self-aware enough, okay, game's over. I'm back in humanity. I've got to be back in and be a normal person. That's got to be huge to have to navigate that yourself.
Yeah, it's challenging, right? Because, as professional athletes, a lot of stuff gets taken care of for you, right? The people serve you and they're there for you, and you've got an agent, you've got people cooking food for you at the stadium, and a lot of stuff's done for you and decisions are made for you, right? And so you have this feeling of like, yeah, I've earned this. This is how it's supposed to be. But then, yeah, when you get away from the training ground and you're just in society, you're no better than, the guy next to you who's a doctor, a nurse, somebody that works in the school, a teacher, anything, a janitor, right? It doesn't matter, right? We're all human beings. And just because some athletes get paid more than other people doesn't mean that, I'm more important than a teacher, right? It's just that we value different things in society, right or wrong. So yeah, that's a challenge for sure. But it's something that needs, and then the players usually that do better in that regard have longer careers.
Have you had to pull a mentee back over the line in these kinds of situations where that there's something there, that mentee's got something? They have it, asterisk it, quotes it. They've got it. But they cross over the line a bit too much and they don't have the self-awareness to pull themselves back over the line. Have you had to have those conversations with any mentees?
Yeah, we have. And some of it is, we still, as a society in soccer anyways, value physical tools early on. And the kid that's 13 who's 6'2" and faster, bigger, and stronger than everybody, that can get away with having a bad touch and doesn't read the game well and doesn't turn well and doesn't do these things well. But shoot, when you get him in space, he can fly by a guy, he can shoot harder than anybody out there, jump faster, jump higher, all these things. And so, yeah, of course they're going to stick out when they're 13. So dealing with some of those players, of helping them understand, hey, what makes you good right now, right? But you still need to develop other things. And similarly, obviously it's a conversation on the other side too, right? Of kids that were like me, like, hey, if you can keep up with those kids and you're smaller, not as fast and stuff, like, hey, you'll be all right in the long run. But yeah, we have had a conversation with a couple of kids who are having success at a young age, but you can tell some of it, or a lot of it, is from their physical tools.
Yeah.
And that doesn't bode well usually for the long run, unless they continue to work on these other things that right now they don't need.
So then let me go to the other side. Have you had a conversation with a mentee to draw them closer to the confidence over, the confidence line, where you can see inside them that I know there's something there. I just need you to come closer to the line of confidence and cockiness. I need to bring you closer to that. It's okay to come here and approach this line. If you had to draw that out of folks too?
Yeah, more of that. Yeah, more of that, honestly, with our mentees of saying, hey, it's not being cocky to have this confidence to say, hey, I'm going to be the best player on the field today. Right. That's got to be the belief that you go into the field. Like, did I think that I was better than Miguel? No, but I did tell myself, hey, be the best player on the field today.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Go show the 40,000 fans like something, go show them something, do it. And that type of mentality. And that's not cocky. That's just getting yourself pumped up, giving yourself the confidence of like, hey, this is why you're here. This is why you're on this team. This is why you're in this opportunity. Right. You've earned all these things. So definitely helping kids understand, like, it's okay to have that ultra confidence in something, especially when you're good at it.
How did you hype yourself up on game days? Was it staring in the mirror and doing the Jack Handy bit of, I'm good enough and gosh darn it, people like me? Was it music? How did you get yourself into a game day mode with the confidence I'm sure that was inside to begin with, but how did you give yourself that extra game day boost to get out there and saying, ain't nobody going past me today?
John, my locker was right next to Brad Gazan. That's all I needed. This guy's so hyped up on energy and espresso that, all I had to do was look at this guy and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I think I'm ready to go.
He's going to squash you if you're not, basically.
Yes, exactly. But when I wasn't teammates with Brad, I think it's a combination of things. For me, it was a little bit more challenging, honestly, sometimes to get pumped up for game days because it was like, I just felt like I was confident and I was just ready to go. But sometimes, especially towards the later end of my career, I needed to get myself going a little bit more. So I drank espresso and I was never huge into music, but I'd listen to tunes to just kind of get in a good mood type thing. But otherwise, it was just through warm up, really.
And Brad stuffing you in your locker if you didn't pay attention to his pregame talk, right? I just have this vision now of you sitting next to Brad going 900 miles an hour, hyping everybody up around the room, and you're kind of sitting there and you're going, you're back. It's like, okay, he's frightening me now. And it's like, I will pay attention. Just don't hurt me. Just don't hurt me in pregame. Everything's fine. It's
not far off, John. That's what you didn't want to stand too close to Brad because he's like, jumping around and fidgety and, he's so big. You're like, dude, don't hit me. Don't step on my toe right now. Like, just go over there, dude. Take your energy, go over there and relax a little bit.
Yeah, I just have this vision of a polar bear swinging his arms around all over the place and you having to sit there and go like this. In your locker, you have to lift your legs up so he doesn't step on your toes, and you have to tuck yourself in like this and tuck yourself in your locker. It's like, I get it. We're okay. I'm all right, man. And I'm not far off on that, huh?
You're not at all.
Who else before we get you out of here and headed to a weekend where you're going to be paying attention to RIFC and everything else going on? And Wake had a bit of an early challenge last night in football, but they got past it to kick off the American football season. Who else were some of those teammates that were just crazy locked in and you were like, just don't hurt me, everything's fine? Who else were those crazy locked in teammates on game day?
Leandro.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Shocking, right?
Yes.
Those guys were the loudest for sure, and those guys really DJ'd and took over the music. So they did it through there as well. I'm trying to think of who else was always amped up. Really, myself, Jeff, Darlington, were kind of all the same, more just focused energy rather than outward crazy energy.
Yeah, I just had this vision of Big Red kind of sitting there and looking at everything off to the side going, really? He's like this. He's kind of surveying the room and he's like, seriously? We'll be fine. I just have that vision of Big Red in the locker room. She's just the master of everything. Where Brad is one way, Lorenowitz is on the absolute other end of the spectrum. He's 180 degrees off to the side when it comes to where Brad is, I think, on a game day.
Exactly.
That's my thought. What's the latest with you and Greg and Beyond Goals? What's going on?
We've got our sale going on right now. So honestly, we've got a lot of mentees signing up right now, which is awesome. So I've been busy the last 2 weeks and getting everybody ready for the upcoming fall season. That's actually not upcoming anymore. It's kind of in full swing for most kids.
Yeah.
It's been good and busy right now.
Yep, and Alex Basine says, extolling the Stoic philosophy here. Sounds like Seneca with all of this. You suffer more in anticipation than in actuality.
Well, if I had said those exact words, it would have sounded a lot smarter.
Well, hey, you put like Seneca in like a frame behind you where it's like the Monday through Friday is the rough part to get you ready for Saturday. Game day should be the easiest part of everything. Just ask any coach or any player that played for any rough coach. Cap, as always, it's fantastic to see you, especially when you're sporting your RIFC gear as you are chasing the playoffs. It is a matchup against Birmingham. Then, as you mentioned, Birmingham Legion. Then after Birmingham, you wanted to go maybe see Bob Lilly from Pittsburgh yell at Rhode Island FC players and his own players 45 minutes after the match is over. And then a trip to Irvine, California, which I know you're not going to take, September 14th, and then FC Tulsa visits RIFC on September 21st. Get out of here, my friend. Thanks as always. We will catch up with you next time around.
Have a great long weekend, everybody.
Yep, what he said. So that is it. Labor Day. Cap's out of here. And yes, Alex. So Parkey equals Seneca. Parkey equals Seneca. I think that's where we are here. Hour number 2. And this means it's time for the weekend whip around. Patent pending, trademark coming soon. Or hopefully rather than later, we get you ready for everything going on in Major League Soccer and with Atlanta United as they get ready for the matchup against Charlotte. We'll go through all the juice boxes, all the previews, all the things that you need to know. Any questions, any thoughts, put them in the Twitch pitch. But what I wanted to do first, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, I wanted to play for you a little bit of the conversation that Jason had with Garth Lagerwey and Demetrius Evstathiou in the front office with Atlanta United. And this particular section, like I said, go to the Off the Woodwork section. Abby has posted the link in the Twitch pitch. Like I said, listen in your car in traffic. It's 53 minutes with ads, 45 minutes of content total. It's a great conversation, and it's very rare that you have front office folks that are this high up the front office chain willing to have sit-downs with individuals, and that Jason got Garth and Demetrius in a room together to have this conversation as an explainer for what front offices are going through and what the Atlanta United front office is going through these days in navigating the world stage. Great listen. Off the Woodwork podcast with Jason, Garth, and Demetrius. This particular section is the beginning of the discussion about transfer windows and what Atlanta United and Major League Soccer teams are having to do in fighting the deadlines overseas. And we'll get into probably after 11:05. We'll get into all the transfer news and what to look out for, because Big Ben's chimes hit at 11 o'clock, which will be 6 o'clock our time, and that'll be the end of the transfer window. You can still sign free agents in Major League Soccer till I think September 13th, which is the roster freeze date. This is the first half of a conversation, the first part of a conversation that Jason had with Garth and Demetrius about the transfer window, what Atlanta United is having to juggle at present, and what it's like to be a player on the world stage when it comes to the present day. Once again, courtesy of the Off the Woodwork podcast, the Odyssey app, 92.9 The Game. Here is Jason, Garth Lagerwey, and Demetrius Evstathiou from the front office at Atlanta United.
Yeah, I mean, look, in simple terms, the European clubs don't need to take our offer because they have 2 more weeks to take whatever offer they see fit. And look, they're in the same boat, in the sense of they want to try to plan their team ahead of time as well. And so
100%.
If they have an outgoing, they need an incoming, and sorry, the European market is the biggest market, and that timing dictates when things happen. And look, we have the reverse of this in the winter, right? Because the Europeans go first.
Right.
they close January 31st, and then we have February 1 on, where us and China and I think maybe Turkey are open for a little bit in the Scandinavian countries. Yeah. So it's a matter of, it does make for some, and to be clear, like, everyone's aware of this issue.
Yeah.
Our window was shoved back a week later this year than it was last year in an effort to try to close some of the gap. But the issue is just that there is either a gap or there is not. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that you look at, maybe big picture, long term, is, do you try to realign with a European calendar? Because if you do that, now you can line up the transfer windows, because FIFA has restrictions. Indeed, you can maybe go into detail, but the primary window before your season, that has to be the longer window,
right?
And then the in-season or the mid-season window has to be a shorter window. So we're confined as to, we can't make it bigger in the summer such that we can accomplish it another way. So this larger macro issue of flipping to the European calendar then becomes a discussion, and I don't have a lot of wisdom as to will we or won't we, but that is one potential solve, albeit one that is for sure different, right? I mean, we played this way for 29 years. I think we're 29 seasons, no, 28 seasons.
28.
But do we do something that's a little bit more out of the box, that to look at and say, hey, this is now, as MLS evolves, and we are spending more money on our teams and players, and the quality's improving. And like the other dynamic we had in the summer window was, every player that we were going in for, we were competing with big clubs in Europe for.
Right.
Now, I assure you that wasn't always the case in MLS, right?
No.
But now that we're, honestly on an Arthur Blank owned team where we have the resources, we're able to sell the players and have the money to go out and get kind of the best players in the world, now the timing matters more, if that makes any sense, because now all of a sudden we're fishing in a larger pond, and there are bigger predators. So we got to have some different bait to try to keep fishing. So that's what prompts then the larger conversation about European calendar.
So there you go. That's part of a larger conversation that Garth and Demetrius Efthathiou had with Jason. Once again, Off the Woodwork podcast. Abby's put the link in the Twitch pitch. And it is a wide-ranging conversation covering a lot of topics that front offices have to deal with these days in Major League Soccer. And some of the new things that are going to be coming across, they do discuss the models that are available to Major League Soccer teams about how they can assemble their rosters. Do you want to do the 2 DPs and the 4 U22s like Atlanta United did for this year specifically, plus the allocation money that is allotted in that situation? Or do you do the 3 and 3 and not get the allocation money that is earmarked for that particular situation? The discussion of a term that will stick in your head now because of the new dynamics involved in Major League Soccer, DGOM, discretionary general allocation money, how all of the AMs play with each other, how Atlanta can take the money that is newly allotted and disperse it across the entirety of the roster build. And so there's a lot about roster build. There's a lot about AM. There's a lot about how it plays in there. There's a lot about all of these new dynamics and all these dynamics that have the alphabet soup that we make fun of. That's a part of this conversation. So Off the Woodwork, Odyssey app, 92.9 The Game, Jason, Garth, and Demetrius Efthathiou in the front office discussing everything going on. Listen to it in traffic. It's a great educator. It's a great educator and a great education about what Atlanta United is dealing with in the world marketplace these days. So I cannot recommend it any more highly. And so, give it a listen. But like I said, I wanted to give that preview and that chunk about what part of it was. Jason will be coming on 10:30 in the 10:30 half hour, and we'll discuss it there. Okay. All right. Major League Soccer on the weekend. And there's a lot going on involving the league in and of itself. We'll go through once again where you can watch, how to watch, all those kinds of things, standings, and get you ready for the weekend with the schedule. So standings going into the weekend. I want to know what you're thinking about Atlanta United and Charlotte. Put it in the Twitch pitch. Like I said, Jason should be joining us after 10:30. We'll talk twos. We'll talk his interview. We'll talk Atlanta United with him. We'll talk Charlotte with him as well. All right. So standings right now in Major League Soccer. Miami's in. 26 matches played, 56 points, 8 points clear of Cincinnati. Cincinnati's in second. Columbus, 2 matches in hand, is 2 points behind Cincinnati. I would anticipate that Columbus, once again, finding ways to win once they get reoriented back into the schedule. They played in the midweek, and they knocked off Philadelphia. Columbus right now, 46 points, 2 matches in hand with the folks around them. Red Bulls at 42. NYCFC is 5th at 39. Charlotte, 38 points, 10-8-8, 6-2-5 at home this season at B of A. Orlando City is at 34 points. They are in 7th. Toronto has played the most matches in the Eastern Conference. They have played 27. They're at 33 points. They're chasing Orlando. Atlanta United right now in the 9. They would have Toronto in the play-in round if the playoffs started today. 26 matches, 500 at home, 5-5-3. They've won twice on the road this year. 26 matches played, 28 points. This starts the chaos in the Eastern Conference. Like I said, initially when the season started, I thought the chaos would be between, say, 3 and 9. It's 9 to the bottom. Philadelphia and Montreal, same record, 6-11-9, 27 points, but Montreal's goal difference is catastrophic at -20. When they lose big. And keep an eye on Montreal this weekend, by the way. Joey Saputo was in attendance when they got beat 5-0 by New England Revolution last weekend. Like I said, I was surprised that Laurent Courtois made it out of the weekend alive, knowing Joey Saputo's past. Philadelphia's in 10th. Montreal's in 11th. They're both at 27 points. 26 points. New England with 8 wins. Chicago, Nashville, and D.C. And New England, by the way, also has 2 matches in hand, so they can make up some room too. 26 matches played, Chicago, Nashville, and D.C. Each is 6-12-8, no lie. Goal difference is separated by 4 goals with those 3 teams. So literally 13, 14, 15, they're all at 26 points. They're all behind New England. But 6-12-8. Chicago's goal difference is -12. Nashville's goal difference is -15. DC's goal difference is -16. So 4 goals, the second tiebreaker, is what separates 13 through 15 right now in the Eastern Conference. Crazy. Western Conference. LAG has played 27 matches, the most in the Western Conference. 52 points, 5 points clear of LAFC. LAFC's juggling multiple competitions. They have 3 matches in hand on LAG. They are 5 points back. RSL, 44 points. Colorado at 41. That's 1 through 4. Seattle is chasing. They're at 26 matches, 40 points. Vancouver, because of multiple competitions, 24 matches played, so they have some room to maneuver. They're in 6th. So they have 2 matches on Colorado. You win both of those, you're north of them, and you're chasing Salt Lake for the 3 if you're Vancouver. Portland, 37 points. They have appealed a suspension, and they're hoping to get it rescinded from 2 matches down to 1. And so they're hoping to be as close to full strength for not this weekend, but next as possible. Portland, 26 matches played, 37 points. And they have the same number of wins as Houston, but a better goal difference. Houston, 25 matches played, 37 points. Austin is the 9. 9-10-7, 34 points. They are 1 point ahead of Dallas and Minnesota. Dallas and Minnesota, 26 matches played, same record. Dallas has 2 more goals in goal difference than Minnesota. Dallas is dead even at 0, 42 scored, 42 allowed. Minnesota's at a -2. Kansas City, 27 points. We know that they're chasing Open Cup, and that's where they're headed. If something happens, the rest of the season for them is if they were to go zombie sporting and work their way into the playoffs. They're 7 points out of the playoffs right now. They're focused on the matchup with LAFC and Open Cup. 27 matches, 27 points. All Caps right now is at 24 points in 26 matches. How the mighty have been figured out. San Jose 17 points at 5-19-2, 61 goals allowed, 33 scored in 26 matches. They are dead last in the Western Conference. So that sets up the schedule for this week and what it looks like. All the matches are on season pass with the exception of 2. Free side of Apple TV gives you Toronto FC and DC United. No story advancement in the drone investigation in and around Toronto FC and Forge for the Canadian Championship. No advancement in that we know of publicly. That's the free side of Apple TV, Toronto and DC at BMO. Also Sunday at 2:45. No word if that is the actual start time or not, but that's the time listed by Major League Soccer's website. All Caps is hosting LAG at City Park in the last match of the weekend, 2:45 on Big FOX and the free side of Apple TV. So, Charlotte and Atlanta, we'll save that discussion for when Jason comes in at 10:30. Cincinnati and Montreal, that's at TQL at 7:30. Once again, we mentioned where Cincinnati is in the standings. We mentioned where Montreal is and where they are currently struggling. No real surprise that even with the struggles at the back for Cincinnati, that you end up with the numbers for FC Cincinnati obviously being fake. I don't know why this is. It might just be the new security system that I didn't install on the computer, but it's like it's not letting me access the things that I've accessed in the past. I don't know why this is. I have to hit it like twice and 3 times. Yes, I want to go there. FC Cincinnati, big favorite at a -238. Your draw is a +407. CF Montreal is a +543 in the composite, courtesy of our friends at Odds Portal. No real surprise there. Cincinnati can still go through all of their issues at the back, and I think they can navigate CF Montreal pretty easily. Columbus hosting NYCFC at lower.com. No real surprise once again that Columbus favored at a -141 with a charging NYCFC side. NYC is a +343. Crew are a +309. Also at 7:30. Red Bulls and Philadelphia Union. Remember, Philadelphia played in the midweek. Red Bulls favored at a -139. Draws a +303. Philadelphia is a +345 to win in the composite. It's going to be a tall order, I think, for Philadelphia on a quick turn going up against Red Bulls. Orlando and Nashville. Purple team playing at Inter.co as Nashville comes to town. No real surprise once again. Orlando, one of the more prohibitive favorites in the juice boxes at a -204. Your draws a +349. Nashville on the road a +530. Toronto and DC. Toronto on the plus side at home at a +118. Remember, Christian Benteke has signed a contract extension with DC United. +118 for Toronto FC. Draws a +274, and the DC United run is a +204. Jarrett joining us now on a Friday. Good Friday, Jarrett. What is up?
It's Friday, thank God.
Yes, and you know that means one thing.
Come on, man.
It's
Go for it, dude.
It's Friday. Friday. Friday.
I forgot to start the show with that. There's so much going on that I've talked about the Champions League draw, the Europa League draw happening this morning. I forgot to start the show off with that. That's how locked into all the information that we have. That's how much information we have here today. I forgot to do that to start the show.
It's fine. I mean, the best part was having to explain to Madison last week about that because she was born in like, I don't know.
The youngin'. She's like, what was that? Well, I'll tell you.
She's born like 2002.
Yes.
She doesn't remember like 96 Rock being, she wasn't there for 96 Rock being an actual functioning thing, much less like the very tail end of the death throes of the original 99X.
Yes. we're going through all of the previews and all the kickoffs. We're saving Atlanta and Charlotte for the bottom of the hour when Jason can hopefully duck in as he gets ready to watch practice. Cincinnati, Montreal, Columbus, NYC, Red Bulls, Philly, Purple Team, Nashville, Toronto, and DC. What comes to mind in the other 7:30 starts for you?
A lot of teams. It's just a lot of teams in a very small amount of space. Like, you have a lot of teams playing who are grouped together in a way that every one of them is going to possibly change playoff positions 1 or 2 spots every week. And I know I said this last year, and I'm going to repeat it for all years. If you live every single week by where you are in the table, you're gonna die by middle of September from stress.
Yeah.
You can keep a weather eye on the table with 8 games left, give or take.
Yep.
But living and dying by it right now is just a way to make yourself miserable. There's too much happening. When you get to like 4 games left, you can really start boring into it. Right now, you can't worry about it. All you can worry about is winning the games in front of you, because you have so many of these teams that are going to be playing each other that are in the muck. You can't worry about, oh, well, so-and-so beat so-and-so, so now we definitely have to win. Like, no, you have to win anyway, because there are so many bodies around you. All you can do is take care of yourself. And all these teams have to have that mentality.
Jarrett, you never worry about being in the muck.
Or the mire, I guess.
Well, my point being, you can't spend the next 8 weeks worrying. You can't spend the most of the next 8 weeks worrying, so-and-so beat so-and-so. Where are we in the table? Are we in 9th? Are we 8th? Are we 10th? It's going to change so much hour by hour at times throughout Saturdays and Sundays. It would be Fridays if MLS could get their head out of their ass and schedule a Friday night game, because Friday night is there for you, but you refuse to take advantage of it.
But that'd be one game. It wouldn't be a whole slate of games on Friday.
It would be, but I'm also going to use this to get on my soapbox and talk about that MLS should have a Friday night game.
I've said this for probably a decade.
Peachtree Post
because
days.
they did it for a while on Univision, and it was great. And I loved it. And it was something that I wish they had done more of. But one thing, are you telling the fans not to worry about the jumping up and down, or are you talking about the squad?
I'm telling the fans not to. Like, you can't just stare at the table 8 weeks ago. You can't stare at the table all night long while like Toronto and DC and a bunch of the other clubs have pulled up and blown up their sock and boppers and are beating the dog out of each other. All you can do is worry about the game that's in front of you. When it gets to like 4 weeks left in the season, if you really want to start staring at it, I won't begrudge you that. 8 weeks to go for me is just too far out to be like living and dying by where you are on the table. And I know it's a thing
right now.
Yeah, it's too early for this crap.
It's too early, and right now Atlanta United is in the spot. Of course they want to be higher, but they're in the playoff spot. So if they take care of what's in front of them, then they should hold on to that spot. It's not going to be easy. You're playing a lot of the teams around you, but it's just this Eastern Conference is very difficult. And we can sit here and we can talk about the whole season long and this and that and this move and that move and blah, 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 blah. And you can just spin yourself into mediocrity and being upset. And that's not a healthy way to be. Like, the fact is, we can do the post-mortem when the season's done. Right now, it is about Charlotte. It's about Saturday night. It's about getting 3 points. And then it's about a break. And then it's about Nashville at home and getting 3 points. It has to be game by game. And what I see so often, and this isn't an Atlanta United conversation. This is just sports conversation. It's so easy to sit here and look at, well, I'm not going to enjoy what's happening right now because I'm still mad about that loss 3 weeks ago. Stop it. Stop it. You can do that later, and we will, and we'll have the conversation about what went wrong and what could have been different. We can do those hypotheticals later, but you have a game against a rival on Saturday night. It should be a really fun atmosphere in Charlotte. It should be a very not hostile in a like scary way, but in a really pushing Charlotte side of things. It should be one of those games that we get excited about why we're doing this, why we're spending our time watching these games, why we're running around calling and covering these games, why we do this. This is why. And that doesn't diminish because the team is further down in the table than you'd like them to be. That is just such a frustrating way to try to talk to anybody about what's going on. This team is this team. It's not 2018. It's not 2019. It's not 2022. It's not any of those. It's 2024. And the work that this group is putting in, and now you have another fun subplot to all of this, and watching an incredibly talented player in Alexei Miranchuk figure out how to fit into this team on the fly, because that's the situation you're in. You see this with big teams in Europe in early February after the window closes in midseason, and you've got to throw that top guy in there. And, fitness is a different issue in that situation in general, but you got to get them in the field. You don't have time to do all the work on the training pitch that you'd like to, and you've got to see them figure it out. And I thought it was so cool this week, Jay Fortune talking about it feeling like a pickup game with you see what he can do and you try to figure out how to play with that and how to work with that and put him in good spots and how he can put you in good spots. That's a fun thing to watch. A smart, talented player figure it out on the fly. If he gets it right, this is going to be a fun team to watch down the stretch, because you would expect more chances. You would expect better chances. And hopefully you're going to find some goals, because right now, that's the difference. That's it. And it's not about even creating the chances. It's not like Rios and TRA have not done a good job in scoring. You've created so many chances over the course of the year that you're a top 5 team in chances created in XG and all those things. Your goal scoring is not there. Your record is not there. The Galaxy, who's a great attacking team, and Atlanta United going into Saturday night, XG, pretty much the same between the two. The goals scored, what about 13 or 14 difference? Well, that's the difference between being first in the West and being where Atlanta is, 9th in the East. That's it right now. And this is going to be a fun ride to see, can Miranchuk create better chances that end up in the back of the net a little more often? And can this team turn some of those draws into wins, some of those losses into draws, and some of those losses into wins? And if they do, they're going to be in the playoffs, and they're going to be a team on a high going into the playoffs, which is going to make for a fun postseason.
Sidebar, if you haven't seen it on Atlanta United's social media, the trip to Bergamo to catch up with Alexei Miranchuk and get his thoughts, tremendous work by the Atlanta United social media team to fly over and get his early thoughts about coming over to be a part of Atlanta United and get him into a car at Hartsfield-Jackson International to start the journey. Very, very cool. Once again, they hit another home run for 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Didn't feel like it at all, and that's the sign of a great piece that they put together.
Yeah, Alexei's been cool to get to watch a little bit and get to talk to a little bit. He just seems like a really chill kind of guy who is chill in terms of being off the field and vibing with people, but intense on the field. And that's an interesting balance. He's not the biggest talker on the field. He's not super demonstrative. Maybe that'll change as he gets more accustomed with this group, but he's a big personality with his skill and his talent, and it's fun to watch.
Happy birthday to one of the 4 people on the show. And it's not me, Jason, or Jarrett.
Haha. Thanks, guys.
That was some interesting math, John, but okay.
Yes, it's not me, Jason, or Jarrett, so that means that it is the 4th person. So happy birthday, Madison. And how are you celebrating this trip around the sun?
Oh, I mean, well, first of all, I can now simply say, in quoting Taylor Swift, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling 22. Thank you, everybody.
You were waiting all week for that.
Oh, yeah.
I was.
Just
I think she's literally been waiting all year.
No, actually, because I turned 21 and I was like, oh, I know it's next. So I was like, I got it. No, but well, tonight I'm going home seeing the family for a little bit.
Are they
Hanging
paying?
out with family.
Are they paying for dinner?
Oh, of course. We're going to get Mexican. Absolutely.
All right.
There
Big birthday cake, maybe.
Oh, actually, I don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
Knowing my mom, probably, yeah.
Okay. One candle,
Loves Carrie.
one candle, or 22.
Oh gosh, we normally don't do candles. Actually, I mean, I think we just do like
Overrated.
one. I think we just do like one if we do, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. But and then I mean, I'm headed up to Charlotte to cover United tomorrow. So
Yes.
that's how I'm celebrating.
Okay. So, Maddie, since it is your birthday, do you have a question for Jason about this matchup with Atlanta United and Charlotte?
Oh, I mean, I think I'm always so fascinated, especially like I go back to like the US men's national team and then Panama in that matchup, just because it is a heated rivalry.
Mhm.
And we saw the team get heated and kind of keeping that composure. How do you expect it, even if it may feel like a rivalry to some, may not feel like a rivalry to some? How do you keep your emotions in check, especially going into a game like this, where you said it's not going to be hostile, but it's going to be a little bit more of a like, hey, there's something to prove here.
Yeah, this is such an interesting rivalry, and stop gatekeeping the word rivalry, folks. Like I beg of everybody, like you can have a whole bunch of rivalries. They can all have varying degrees of intensity, and it's okay to call something a rivalry if somebody else disagrees with it. I hate the gatekeeping around the rivalry word. Charlotte's a rivalry because there's going to be a lot of Atlanta fans who are going to drive up and be in the building, just like there were a lot of Charlotte fans who drove down, just like the same with Nashville. Rivalries can be a lot of different things. This is a rivalry. This is a different kind of rivalry, in my opinion. It has a different feel than Atlanta and Orlando. It has a different feel than Atlanta and Nashville to me. I think Nashville has gotten a little more hostile. I don't know if Atlanta Charlotte will ever truly be hostile, and a big reason why is Anton Walks. Honestly, I think there's always a different feel around this game, and I'll give you all the teaser. Hopefully, it'll be hitting sometime this afternoon on the History of Atlanta Soccer podcast series. Sandy McAfee outdid herself with the podcast about this rivalry and specifically about Anton's effect on it. Lots of different voices in it. It was a really good listen and conversation that I was able to have with some folks, and I know Sandy had a ton of different conversations around this. It's a really good listen. Take your time with it. It's not an easy listen, but it's a really good listen, and I think like that factor in this makes this feel a little different. And I think it will for a long time and maybe forever. And that's okay. Charlotte fans are going to be really hyped for this game. They've added some good pieces in the window. Tim Ream makes that defense that's been really good even better. On the Atlanta side, you know, you're getting Moranchuk in. Charlotte's got a 10 as well, and Pep Biel. Like you're trying to get both of them going. Handling the emotion of it, I think, is multifaceted in this game because it will get contentious at times. You know, Ashley Westwood's an old school English midfielder. He's going to go flying into some tackles. That's going to tick people off at times. That's okay. I want to see that emotion out of Atlanta United. I think I'm not ever as worried with the character makeup of this Atlanta United squad in getting over emotional. At times, I want them to get more emotional, and I want them to be a little nastier in games like this when the tackles start flying. And I hope this is a game that can bring that out of them a little bit because I think it's there. I just think it hasn't come to the surface yet. Atlanta's got to manage those emotions. Again, multifaceted emotions. You know, there's not a lot of guys on the squad at this stage that played with or against Anton in that time period. But I know for the coaching staff, it is an emotional time anytime it's Atlanta and Charlotte. It's going to be a big game past that emotion. I think that's what you have to keep in mind here is you got to manage that element of it, but this is a critical match. You know, it's not going to end anybody's season because that Eastern Conference is so jumbled. You could go from 9th to 15th and then 15th back to 9th. Like, it's that chaotic. But because of that, every point I think is magnified a little bit. So if you go on the road against a team that's ahead of you and you get a point, that's not a bad thing. You're not playing for it. You're not going there looking for it. You're looking for all three, and you're fully capable of getting all three. But you've got to keep in mind that big, big picture of things here. And this is about being as strong as you can be and getting stronger every single game over these last 8 and finishing in a playoff spot and finishing on a big upswing going into that postseason. It's not going to be easy, but this is a good test along the way to get there.
Jarrett, what's on your mind for Jason this morning as we preview Atlanta United and Charlotte?
Okay, so as far as putting together that midfield, this is something that we've kind of seen coming over the horizon with Alexei Miranchuk being a part of it. How do you, and it's going to change. I know it's easy to want to write a midfield out in pen and to carve it into stone, but with the guys you have and the games you have that are going to be different, and styles make fights, how are you lining up this midfield this week?
It's a good question, and I think you can go a couple different ways. I mean, I think you have really 2 templates that you can look at here when you're talking about the midfield and how you incorporate Miranchuk. You can do it in the way that we've seen this team play lately, which is in a 4-3-3, so a 3-man midfield, and don't get hung up on 6 and 8 and 10. I know it was like a huge conversation about Jay Fortune playing higher up the field in the last game, and well, if Miranchuk comes in, he's going to take his spot. Like, Fortune wasn't a 10. Like, the game was taking him into those roles, and he was going higher than Sleesh was in this, because in the long term, Sleesh is going to be a deeper lying midfielder because Miranchuk is going to get into those spots as well. But 6, 8, 10 in the way this midfield works, it's not rigid. It's not to say that a 6 can't get forward and a 10 can't come back. So don't get hung up on that stuff. If Miranchuk is in this midfield and you keep that current situation, he might look like an 8 at times. He might be deeper than you think. I don't think he's purely going to be just a 10 that sits underneath the striker and doesn't do anything defensively. I don't think that's what this team's going to look like. I don't think that's what Rob Valentino wants this midfield to look like. I don't know if you can really do that in the modern game as much anymore. Your forwards got to defend. Your 10's got to defend. Your defenders got to be able to attack. That's just the nature of where soccer is in 2024, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So if you have the 3-man midfield and you slot Miranchuk in, you're talking about a combination of 5 guys. It's Bartosz Slisz, who I think plays if he's healthy. Jay Fortune, who right now is playing at that level to hold that spot. Tristan Muyumba, who's dealing with a hip issue, and Rob Valentino said he was day-to-day yesterday, which makes you think that maybe he's not available for this one. Dax McCarty, who's not going to be able to play 90 minutes in all 8 games coming up. And you have to pick your spots. Is it 90 sometimes, or is it 60 sometimes to start? Or is it coming off the bench for 30 sometimes? Probably all of the above. I don't think it's going to be 90 minutes in every game left for Dax McCarty. I just don't think that's going to happen. So, and then Miranchuk. So do you play in this one? Is it Slisz, Fortune, and Miranchuk? Is it Slisz, McCarty, and Miranchuk? Is it Slisz, McCarty, and Fortune? It's one of those combinations, because I just don't think Tristan Muyumba being talked about as day-to-day is going to be able to start. Maybe he can come off the bench, maybe not. The other template that you can look at is what we saw this team do earlier in Rob Valentino's time, which was that 5-2-3, 3-4-3 kind of a shape. So 2 central midfielders, but in the way that you have the personnel right now, it can almost turn into an attacking midfield box, where if you do that and you play 3 center backs and you play 2 wing backs and then 2 central midfielders, if let's say that's Slisz and Fortune, because in that kind of a setup, yeah, I think it's Miranchuk not in one of those 2 spots. So if you do that, and let's say Slisz and Fortune here, then you're looking at 2 wingers, and you have 2 wingers, in air quotes, in Saba Lobjanidze and Alexei Miranchuk, who can play wide and come inside into the pockets. So you get kind of narrow in this situation, but if you play Miranchuk off the left, which he played a good bit for Atalanta, and he comes in on his left foot, and you play Saba Lobjanidze off of the left side, Miranchuk off of the right, cutting in, Lobjanidze off of the left cutting in on his right foot, which we've seen him do. And then you have your forward. That could be another way to get something out of this group in a different kind of shape. And I don't think that's going to be the first template, but I think that's something that we could see over time with this group potentially. And it doesn't dramatically change what you're asking Moranchuk to do or Lobjanidze to do in those situations. It just changes where your strengths and your weaknesses are. And it's going to be down to the opponents that you're playing to see what works. In the run of play, that setup worked extremely well against Real Salt Lake, who's one of the best attacking teams in the league. It blocked them from getting the ball into those attacking players in the run of play. Remember, they scored 3 goals on set pieces. That was a 5-2 game. Take 3 goals from set pieces away, which is not run of play, which has nothing to do with the shape that we're talking about. That's a 2-2 game. That's a very different game. That is a possibility. I think the 4-3-3 is probably the more likely situation. And if Moranchuk is in that central midfield, I think you're going to see him drop from time to time, and it's going to look as much like an 8 as it does a 10, as maybe occasionally a 6. I don't think he drops as deep and as often as Thiago Almada did when he played that role, but I do think he'll play from a deeper position at times. So, 3-man midfield, I think you have 5 guys, and one of them is listed as day-to-day, and one of them can't play 90 minutes every game. So I think you can start to figure out how you make that work over the run of these 8 games.
Jason, Maddie, and Jared hanging out with us here on the morning show as we preview Atlanta United and Charlotte. So, Jason, in your analysis of Charlotte and knowing what you're seeing from Atlanta United, where do you think Charlotte is at its weakest? Where do you think Atlanta United can do their most damage in looking at Charlotte? I remember last time it was an entirely different setup at Mercedes-Benz. They picked on Nathan Byrne, and it was a long day for him in a very short amount of time. Where do you think Atlanta United can attack Charlotte and be the most effective, you think?
You pick on Nathan Byrne and you try to make it a very long day for him, because when you look at the back line, the weaker elements are wide and the stronger elements are central. You add Tim Ream to that center back group with Malanda and I think Andrew Privet, who's been one of the success stories in the MLS Super Draft. And then you also look at the rest of that midfield with Westwood, with Bronico. It's a really good midfield. So the spine is very strong. The weaker spots are out wide. I think the Red Bulls did a good job of that. And if you've listened to the MLS Six-Pack, Jessica Charman talked about that. The wide play is a concern on the Charlotte side. It can be an advantage on the Atlanta side. You've got to get more out of the left side for Atlanta. You can't get one-dimensional with the right. But I think you also need to get Brooks Lennon into more attack-minded spots. And that's something that they haven't done as much of in the last couple of games. And you want to get him into those spots because you look at the quality of the crosses that he's delivered, and he's among the best in the league. I think some people argue with the stats, but he is. Just facts are facts. I don't think the stats are trying to lie to you. Like he's completing more crosses than a lot of right-sided players, wingers and fullbacks in general. I'd like to see him have the ability in the run of play at times to come back inside, which we've seen at times. But that means somebody has to be wide. That means whether it's Moranchuk drifting out there, whether it's Lobjanidze drifting out there, you've got to have a wide option on that side, but you want to make it a little harder to predict. On the left, you just got to produce, and Amador, I think, has been solid going forward, maybe a little bit more solid than we thought. Sean De Silva or whoever else is playing on the left wing, you've got to get more production there. And that would be the side that would be going at Nathan Byrne. So, it feels like a game where if it's Sean De Silva starting, and I've talked about this in games before, he's one of those guys that I feel like if you get him going early, he can be a problem and a nightmare for an opponent. I think you need to test it early. I would try to get him in behind. I would try to get him isolated with Nathan Byrne as much as possible, running at the Charlotte right back, and see. And if Byrne starts to struggle, well, then you see the weakness, and then you can keep chipping away at it. Then Amador can get forward a little bit more. Then whether it's Moranchuk drifting there, whether it's Fortune, at times Sleesh, starting to put more pressure on that side. When you find the weak spot, I think then you have to really put pressure on it to break it down. And I think that would be it. We'll see. You've got to be at your best to make that a weak spot as well. So we'll see if that happens.
Maddie, what's on your mind for Jason as we continue the conversation with Atlanta and previewing Charlotte?
Ooh. I'm trying to think what questions I have because I don't know what y'all already asked.
Well, we could also talk about the twos in Chattanooga this weekend. We can talk about the college game. Anything's on the table.
So many things.
Yep.
Because we are going to be crazy and go up to Chattanooga after the weekend that we're all having.
Yes.
Because why not? You know,
Mm-hmm.
why not? Also, do love Chattanooga. Chattanooga, it's a fun little stadium. I loved going up there for WPSL. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, I think the twos in Chattanooga might be my next question for you. It's like it's a unique game. You know, they came to us, we played, and we also then went to them already, and we've played again. What needs to be done in order to see more success coming out of that matchup and more of another rivalry as well, kind of for Atlanta United?
Yeah, it is a rivalry. Chattanooga is always up for a game against any Atlanta team, whether it was the old Atlanta FC when we went up there and ruined their opening game party in 2009, whether it was the old Silverbacks, whether it's Atlanta United first team in Open Cup games, whether it's Atlanta United 2. Chattanooga is always up for it. And I think that's the challenge here for the twos is they've got to be up for that intensity because, look, it's tough. And Steve Cook talks about this all the time. This isn't a team in the normal sense. It almost has more of like a national team feel with guys coming in and going out of it. So you don't have the same team building kind of elements that you would because you're going to have guys from the first team that drop down. You're going to have, academy players who are stepping up and you need to give them a game and you need to see how they handle it. So lots of different factors that go into it. And this one is a little interesting for the twos in the sense that the first team plays the day before. It is a short trip to Charlotte. I hope we'll be back home. I think I might actually be asleep by 1 a.m. this time around. And then, it's an easy trip for guys to make it up there. We saw this with the game in Huntsville, where some players didn't play in the first team game the night before. Now, that was at home. But again, Charlotte's a short flight. And guys made the trip over to Huntsville day of the game and contributed. And maybe you see that again here. So the twos might get some reinforcements. We don't know yet. But you just have to manage the intensity of the game because Chattanooga will bring everything they've got in front of their fans. Their fans will be up for it. Their fans hate any team from Atlanta, and they will be all kinds of riled up. So Atlanta United 2 has to be able to play at that same intensity level, especially early. It's going to go up and down, and that's okay. But you can't get behind the 8 ball, and you can't let that intensity multiply early if you can't match it. If you match it, then both teams, maybe it becomes a little more of a stalemate in terms of intensity, and both teams have their ups and downs. But if you are getting overrun early, if they start flying in on tackles, they start knocking guys over, the crowd starts roaring, then they just keep growing, and it's hard for you to get to that level. So you've got to be physical and intense early in that game for Atlanta United too.
Jarrett for Jason as we continue the weekend whip around.
And we're going to go back to the first team because I want to figure out, you started to talk about it, and I don't know how much you did, trying to get something out of the left side, however you have to do it. Consistency has been an issue all season for Xande Silva. He's had spurts where he's been really good and then spurts where it just hasn't worked. Whether it's creating overloads, whether it's guys floating around, however you do it. I mean, what else do you do on the left-hand side to try and balance out production that you've gotten more consistently on the right, even if it hasn't been perfect?
It's been pretty good on the right. When you look at what's Saba up to right now, I don't have the stats in front of me. I think 6 and 7 or 7 and 8 in terms of goals and assists. Lennon's on 6 assists, I think, maybe 7. That's a pretty good right side. The left has not been anywhere near that.
I was going to say, especially when the left side hasn't been.
Yeah. So, the right's been great. The left has been a deficit for the team, and that's something that has to change. The work rate has been there, and this is where I have so much respect for Xande Silva because you see guys like him who are super talented and love their 1v1s, and when it's not on for them, they don't give you anything else. And that's not Xande. Xande has worked hard defensively. He's won the ball back for this team pretty consistently. He's been a much better defender higher up the field than I ever thought he would be. So the work rate has been great from him, but I don't know what the Magic situation is, honestly. Like, it is just down to producing more. And I don't want to oversimplify it, but you just have to get goals and assists from that side flat out. And it's not happening enough. And if it's not Shande, then, is it Edwin Mosquera? Is it Saba moving over to that side and then potentially hurting your right side, which has been very good because you've got to get in production from a Mosquera or a Silva on the right or a Tyler Wolf or a Luke Brennan. I mean, all are possibilities, and you've got to find a way to get something out of that. Now, I mentioned it. Moranchuk does give you some different potential things you can do because, yeah, he can play wide and he can play wide from the right. And I don't think that's what they want from him in the long term. I think you want him as a 10 pulling the strings centrally. But when you're trying to find a way to get results in 8 games, and you've got Brooks Lennon who can stretch the field on the right and can be that wide player, making the opponent have to deal with them, and Moranchuk, who would be cutting inside because he's not a traditional winger, it could work. But that's not your first or your second or your third choice. The problem is you got 8 games to make those choices and find some combination that fits. And that's just the challenge that Rob Valentino has had this season, and it's the challenge that Gonzalo Pineda had before him. The left side's been an issue all season long, and we have seen every permutation of left wing, left full back, left wing back that you can imagine, and none of them have worked to the level that they've needed to.
Yeah, you were right. Saba is 6 and 7, and Lennon has 6 assists. Since
so 6 goals and 13 assists from the right side from your 2 players who have mostly been there. That's pretty good.
Yep. Charlotte. When it comes to looking at Charlotte, and I would, once again, I would steer folks to the 6-pack that you and Jess do every week. But when it comes to Charlotte in and of itself, is there any one, for someone who hasn't really seen them and spent a whole lot of time looking at Charlotte, who worries you the most when it comes to Charlotte on offense?
Patrick Agimon, because he's a monster up top. He just physically is a tough matchup, and he fits the way that Charlotte generally wants to play. They are a defend first, get that part of the game right, and then we go get what we can get in the attacking half. So they're going to be direct more often than not. He's a perfect forward for that because he is willing to go knock guys over. He has the ability to time his runs and get in behind, and he has the speed to make all of that work. So it's just a huge challenge. I mean, Stian Gregerson is a big dude and he can run. That's going to be something that you see multiple times in this match of a ball played over the top. And whether you start Agimon or you have him come off the bench, for me, he would be a starter every game, especially in the way that they want to play. Whenever he's in there, if he comes in off the bench, that can be even more challenging because you're a little tired at that point and he's fresh. But they're going to play balls over the top. You're going to have to turn and run at your own goal, and you're going to have to deal with a guy that you might bounce off of.
Yeah.
And that's just a very difficult matchup. They haven't been able to get the best out of Liel Avada yet. Pep Biel is new to this group, so they haven't, he's played 24 minutes. It's kind of the same situation as Moranchuk. Brandon Cambridge is coming back into the mix as well. We've seen him with Crown Legacy. He's back from injury. He's another strong, willing, attacking player, more from a wide position, who can make your life difficult. But Ajimon's the one who scares me just because it's a very difficult matchup, whether it's at the start or at the finish.
Maddie with Jason and Jarrett and me on her birthday here on a Freestyle Friday. What else is on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that was so interesting is how kind of like almost, I don't want to say 180 because Charlotte still has that defensive like outcome, but they took the summer window and they ran with it. They got a whole bunch of new attacking guys that can really create threats as well. It's interesting. I'm excited to see kind of what Charlotte's going to bring to the table in this matchup as a whole, because it's going to be a little bit different than what we're used to. And I guess it kind of is the same question as John's, but I mean, kind of looking at that and kind of seeing the differences in between what they were from when we saw them back in May to then now, what would you say are like the clear differences in what we can expect from the matchup?
I think the difference is they're even better defensively. I think Tim Ream makes them even better. And long term, and I said it on Six Pack when we talked about Ream signing, he's going to pay dividends not just now with him, but he's going to pay dividends over time because he's going to make Malanda better. He's going to make Privet better. He's going to make any of those young players better. He's, one of those guys that for whatever reason, the hashtag USMNT crew have not really liked him very much. Too old, too slow. He started in MLS. He's one of the best center backs this country's ever had. And he's a very different kind of center back than this country's ever had because he's maybe part Spanish. Like he's that kind of center back. He's classy on the ball. So I don't know if you're going to ask him to be that guy as much. I think what you're going to ask him to be is an organizer, a leader, a veteran presence, a calming influence at times. You're going to ask him to do those things. But, and I think this will happen just because of who he is as a player, they are now better in terms of having patience, building out of the back when it's on. They're not going to risk it. They're not going to be dedicated to it. But when it's there, he can pick out a pass. And that gives them a little bit different element. So I think the attacking pieces they added are going to be important for them. But the headline of their summer was adding Tim Ream and what he does to make a team that's conceded just over a goal per game. I think they're even better defensively now. So that makes it even more challenging to go and find a goal on the road.
Jarrett, for Jason and Maddie and me.
I'm going to ask you something really unfair, which is
oh boy,
the interview you did with Garth
and Demetrius.
Which
was very cool that he joined in. I did not expect that until kind of the last minute, and that added a ton of extra context to things. That was great.
Yep.
I would argue people should listen to the whole thing because
I would argue that as well.
There's a lot there that's not just Atlanta United related, but like MLS related, like grand scheme behind the curtain talk.
Yep.
If there's one part of it that you wanted to highlight to kind of scream to the mountaintops at people, what would it be?
That's a really good question because I do say like you need to listen to all of it because there's a lot of context to a lot of things in there. And to give you guys the context on like how it all came about, we have Garth Lagerwey on our radio pregame show almost every game. And the games that it's not him, it's Carlos. We've had Jonathan Spector as well. It's a credit to the club that they've been willing to do that. I don't think there's any other club in Major League Soccer that does that. It is what the Atlanta Falcons do, for example. And it's a segment that I always love in the Falcons pregame when Rich McKay comes in and is talking more big picture things. Not about, I mean, you can bring a lot of different people on to preview the game in front of you, and that's what we do. We can do that too. It's bringing somebody like Garth and in the Falcons case, bringing somebody like Rich on to talk about league rules changing. And that's been a topic of the last, I don't know, month plus where things have evolved and, announcement would be made or the Wiley transfer would happen, the Almada stuff, like all of it. And it's all like, wow. And I'd ask him one time after we finished, I'm like, I think it would be a great opportunity on a longer form situation to sit down and talk about these rules changes and how they affect you and the rest of the league and maybe what's to come. And Garth was totally open to it. And I said, you know what, let's wait and do it after the window's done. And it doesn't need to be a distraction during the window. Let's do it after the window is done and let's have that conversation. Garth was open to it. And then bringing Demetrius in as the cherry on top because he worked in the league office and he knows a lot of the, not just the what of this rule is this, he knows the why it is. And as he explains in pretty big detail, and it was something that had come up in our pre-games, and maybe this is the part to listen to when you at times I think it's easy on the outside, or, you play EAFC or you play Football Manager and you think about how contracts get structured and salary caps get managed, and, you think it's easy. When Demetrios talks about how they structured, and this has been misleading from a lot of media in this country, by the way, and it was why I drove this point home in the conversation. They structured the acquisition costs in different windows to allow them to maximize their salary cap. So when Sabo Lobjanidze was added, when Stian Gregerson was added, when Bartosz Slisz was added, all three are that player that you can put as a designated player and get a benefit from them being a designated player in your salary cap. But you ideally like to have them not as a designated player, about as max as you can get non-DP. So the acquisition cost is always the issue with players at that kind of salary level, that kind of quality. Because the acquisition cost, if you do what some have said you had to do, which is not true, as we've learned, and that's why I think this podcast was really important. If you just amortize the acquisition cost over the life of the contract, then you've got to buy that player down over the life of the contract to have them not be a designated player. What Atlanta United did, again, to maximize how you can add players to this team and make this roster as strong as you possibly can on paper, they had the acquisition costs rolling. So, and the Slisz one is the most fascinating one to me, because to do that, and Demetrios talks about it, you have to have a club on the other side who is willing to take that money later. Because in the case that Atlanta did this, they didn't amortize it. They didn't say, okay, well, we're going to pay you in 5 installments over the 5 years of his contract. No. They said, we're going to pay it up front, but Legia Warsaw, in Bartek's case, because he was the last one of the group, his hits next year. You go to Legia Warsaw and you say, look, we're going to pay you. We're good for it, obviously. But will you take it here? Because in our league structure, it gives us a benefit to not have that acquisition cost be paid and hit our cap and hit his salary cap hit now. It gives us a benefit for that to happen in 25. And they agreed. And that's part of negotiations. That's why these are not simply, I want to sign this player. Player says, I want to go to that club. And then the other club just says, okay. That's not how this works. You're not pushing buttons. You're not watching the wheel spin and seeing if the computer manager on the other side agrees. You have to finesse. You have to talk. You have to find these ways through. And that was such a creative way to do it that I had never heard of in the league. I don't think it's ever happened in the league, to be able to have 3 players come in that are of that ilk, who would be designated players in a lot of situations, but to have them on a rolling basis. And this also, remember, this was with the previous designated player roster setup, where you needed one of those guys to be able to maximize your U22 spots, to have them, which could give you cap relief in other places. Now the rule has changed, but the way that you structured it, it gives you the ability in 2025 to buy down Bartosz Slisz with the increased allocation money that you get from the Caleb Wiley transfer, and the extra allocation money that you get because you didn't sign the additional designated player. And they talk about that in the podcast. Go listen to it. They talk about how all of that went, and it wasn't easy. And the window timing is a factor in it. I know that got a lot of headlines in the last month in terms of the league conversation, that because the window ended 2 weeks before Europe ends, that it's hard. And it is. And that's true. Absolutely true. But the way it worked out, you added Moranchuk, you have 1 designated player spot open. So you take the new thing that came in this summer with the 2 designated players and 4 U22s, and that wasn't their plan. And it wasn't until they didn't get a designated player that they opted for this. But it gave them an extra $1 million in discretionary GAM.
DeGom.
A new term, DeGom.
DeGom.
But you get that on top of the 3 for Caleb Wiley's transfer, that now gives you that ability to buy Bartek's acquisition cost down, so he won't be a designated player next year, and you can go into the market, add 2. So it like to get to that level of specificity and to get to that level of detail and to have a club that willing to tell you we did this, and then when that acquisition cost was paid, then this player became the designated player, and then that acquisition cost was paid, and then it was going to be this player, but now because we've been able to take advantage of X and Y and Z, that player won't be a designated player and we can buy somebody down. So we will have 3 designated players and we will have 3 max non-designated players and the ability to have 3 U22s in whatever capacity you use those for. And as we're seeing in the league, one way you might use that, and Garth talked about it in a pregame segment a while back, if Caleb Wiley transfer had not happened and you had a way to potentially keep him for a longer term, you could have signed him to where he would fit in the U22 initiative. And that's where I think clubs will use that. And Garth talked about it. It's probably a month ago. Somebody like Jay Fortune could fit into that. If you want to re-sign a new deal with Jay Fortune, you could sign him to a salary amount that is more than his cap hit because you could fit him into that U22 initiative, and that gives you a benefit. So there's lots of different ways to construct this stuff, but the amount of detail that was given in that conversation was amazing. And I mean, as somebody who knows a pretty good bit about the MLS roster rules and has tried to not just know what the rule is, but the why as much as we can. And I've watched this league grow from no designated players to 1 to what it is now and the whys along the way. It was really cool to get that in depth. And I don't think it was that in depth with going over people's heads. I thought it was explained pretty thoroughly, pretty clearly, and with good enough detail that I hope it gives people insight into the thinking. And now you go into this January window, and it's going to be a very, very busy time between now with 8 games left in the season, trying to get into the playoffs, trying to make as deep a run as you can, to having a lot of ability to add some top tier talent for 2025 and beyond.
Off the Woodwork, go to 92.9 The Game, go to the podcast section. Off the Woodwork, it's about 53 minutes total with ads. So 45 minutes of content, and they mysteriously just right in the middle of a soundbite, just bang, here's a 3-minute ad break.
And I wasn't able to control that part, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know it's automated and how they determine things with length and all that kind of stuff. No, it was a very eye-opening conversation that went a lot of different directions that I don't think anybody has ever had the gravity to sit there and just break in and sit there. Yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about this. We'll talk about we'll talk about how it applies, how we can spread it across the roster, all these different things with Garth and Demetrius. It was a really cool conversation that you were able to have. Must listen, bookmark. Abby gave the link in the Twitch pitch. Like I said, it was a blast to listen to because it broke down a lot of different things and how the team is approaching things and how Major League Soccer is approaching it with windows that you're having to fight with European windows and European clubs and all this kind of stuff. So must listen, underline, exclamate, italicize, boldface, all that stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuggets in there, and just big thanks to everybody with the club for allowing it to happen, and most of all, big thanks to Garth and Demetrius for. There was nothing that I wanted to ask about that was not allowed. There was nothing that we couldn't get into, and then they went beyond what I was getting into to bring up more things. So it was very, very cool and a great conversation, and we probably could still be sitting there talking about it if we didn't have other jobs.
No doubt. Let's see. Really quickly before we get out of here, it looks like Strasbourg has confirmed that Georgi Petrovic is going over there from Chelsea. Crystal Palace agrees Nottingham Forest to sign Matt Turner as a new keeper. He's a replacement for Sam Johnston, who went to Wolves. Speaking of Southampton, finalizing a deal for Noel Buck on loan from the Revs, according to Gimme Sports, written by Tommy Scoops and Ben Jacobs. And so keep the chaos going. It looks like Chelsea is now submitting an offer for Jadon Sancho. Still, we're trying to figure out where Victor Osimhen's going to go.
How many players does Chelsea have at this point?
2 weeks ago, they had 53 available.
Well, they've been busy in the last 2 weeks. Like, I think it was 43 a couple weeks ago when I yelled and screamed about it on AST. And I know they've added and I know they've subtracted. Why are they still trying to add?
Because they're Chelsea.
But why? Like, okay, I'm going to end on this.
Sure.
you've got Raheem Sterling.
Mm-hmm.
You played him in preseason.
Now you don't want him anymore.
You don't want him anymore.
Mm-mm.
And Jadon Sancho is better? No, he's not. Are you high? Like, no. Like, I'm sorry. Raheem Sterling would fit that team and play well. You don't like him and whatever. Fine. Okay, that's fine. You don't like him personally. You don't like that he got mad and posted wanting more clarification because you left him out of the lineup and all that. Fine. Whatever. You're not getting better by adding somebody else who's not as good. By the way, and he's probably going to have to, or I guess somebody else would then have to go train with. Why do they call this the bomb squad in England? That makes no sense. That's ridiculous.
Unless they were just bombs when it comes to not hitting.
No, that's stupid. That's stupid because they're not. A lot of these guys are not in this case. It's because Chelsea can't go through the checkout line without buying the shiny new toy.
Oh, I know. It's like going to Sharper Image and wanting everything.
It's like going to CVS and ended up with 27 different USB-C chargers because they're at the checkout.
Oh, I like that color. Oh, I want the pink 6-foot cord.
There has not been a team in a long time that the way that they are run and the way that they do things that has angered me as much as Chelsea Football Club right now. And sorry, Chelsea fans, like it's not your fault. Your manager's not in a position to do the best that he can because he's got the island of misfit toys. Pochettino was in the same boat and he said, you know what? I don't want off this island. This is stupid. Get me a boat.
Peace out.
And it's ridiculous and it's a disservice to the club. Get somebody in there with some intelligence and I don't know, this thing called a plan. And maybe follow said plan and maybe not sign 530 feet, 33 first team players. Maybe try that.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah, okay. So he's out. I was going to say broadcast plans for the weekend. We got the Twos and we got Atlanta United. So Jason, I thought Jason was coming back in to talk broadcast plans because I thought he was going to teach that.
God, I was going to just leave, but anyway.
Yes. Yes.
I am flying to Charlotte this afternoon. Then Charlotte tomorrow, 6:30, Five Stripes Countdown with Abe and Garrett. That's from the studio at Colony Square. Kickoff at 7:40 from Charlotte. Then I'll be on a plane. Then I'll fly back. Then Sunday, we will be all over the place. I will be at Center Park Stadium to call from the studio Georgia State women and Western Carolina. Should be a good game. That is Sunday at 1 o'clock. Maddie will be in Brookhaven at Oglethorpe for their home opener with their women's team. And then Sunday night, we will all reconvene like the Avengers and drive to Chattanooga and Finley Stadium, and we will have the broadcast of Atlanta United 2 and Chattanooga FC from Finley Stadium. Pre-game coverage will start at 6:30 for that. Kickoff will be just after 7. And then Monday, we will be at Emory University for the first of 2 matches between the Emory Eagles and the Oglethorpe Stormy Petrels in men's D3 soccer, 2 of the best teams in the country. They're in our backyard. Pre-game coverage we will have on our social media platforms. We will get post-game reactions as well. It's part of the Sonny Carter Invitational. That happens all weekend over at Emory. Belhaven is the 3rd team in the tournament. So Emory plays Belhaven on Saturday afternoon. Oglethorpe plays Belhaven on Sunday afternoon. And then Oglethorpe and Emory play each other on Monday night. So it's a busy weekend in the SDH Network universe.
Now go.
Adios, everybody.
See, there we go. All right. So, and there's that. So, Chelsea's expected to reach an agreement to sign Jadon Sancho. From Ornstein, Chelsea awaiting a green light from Victor Osimhen over a move to Stamford Bridge before advancing those talks. And Aaron Ramsdale is headed to Southampton. James Ward-Prowse set for a loan to Nottingham Forest. Al-Ahly have reached an agreement with Brentford for the proposed signing of Ivan Toney. Apparently, Al-Ahly cannot have both Osimhen and Toney. So it looks like Toney might be heading to Al-Ahly. Osimhen might be heading to Chelsea to carry things over with that. No roster for the U.S.-Canada friendly. From the U.S. side of things, Ropes. Canada put out their roster, and it's a lot of their heavy hitters. They put that out a couple days ago. Yes, Knicks, exactly. Chelsea clearly has a plan. Just buy everybody. Buy everyone in sight. That's the way it goes. Morning, Harry. Morning, Googie. Morning, Knicks. Morning, Ropes. Morning, Unk. Morning, Tom. Let's see. Who am I missing here? Morning, Ropes. Morning, Abby. Morning, Alex. Let's see. Abby. I'm trying to see if I've missed anybody. Morning Four Card, morning Hutch, morning Rich, morning Pars. And I think that's everybody that's been online. So, yeah, keep an eye on your favorite clubs. The transfer window closes at 11 o'clock London time, 6 o'clock our time. Chelsea's going to buy everybody. Trevor Chalobah's drawing interest from clubs late. Wolves aware of the situation, but they're not working on it as of 9 o'clock this morning. Newcastle Crystal Palace interested. Chelsea's going to have all the players, and no one else in the Premier League is going to have any players. So there you go. Great conversation with Jason. Great conversation on Off the Woodwork with him, Garth, and Demetrius. Maddie, since it is your birthday, last thoughts from you before we go.
It's going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah, busy.
Let's go with the little Charlotte-Atlanta rivalry. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Sure.
Excited to get to go to Bank of America Stadium for the first time.
Yes.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Do you have parking, or are you going to park in a deck and try and just be someplace close?
I will have parking.
There you go.
Because our good friend Jessica Sharman is amazing and love her.
Mm-hmm.
But hashtag women in sports.
Yes.
No, but yeah, thank you so much for the birthday wishes. Thank you so much. And yeah, I think that's all I got.
Okay. Jarrett, any thoughts of anything else going on in the league before we get out of here?
Nah, I don't think so. Like I said, it should be a fun weekend. Like, you'll have a lot of games all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of emotions, a lot of chaos. Just kind of roll with it for the next few weeks. Atlanta has a lot of games against teams that they're close to. Like,
yep. No more Western Conference opponents.
Yeah, none more of that shit.
There you go.
You've got a lot of games where you've got potential 6-point swings in hand. However you feel about their odds going into those games, if they win, they put themselves in better chances.
Mm-hmm.
Forward, have fun at Bank of America if you're going. I haven't been there since I think it was 2014.
Oh, wow.
I went to the Georgia Tech Florida State ACC title game.
Yeah.
I think that was the year it was. Nico Leary was the starting tight end for Florida State.
Jack Nicklaus's grandson.
Yes, he was absolutely unhinged out there in the pouring cold rain, playing without gloves, and like at one point dropped a pass. We're like, yes, because you don't have gloves on, you idiot.
Yes.
But Paul Johnson came within like way too close to beating that Florida State team that he had any right to beat. It was very funny.
Yes. Other odds before we get out of here. Austin favored at home against Vancouver. Chicago Fire slight favored at home against and Friends. FC Dallas favored at home against Colorado Rapids at a plus 127. RSL big favorite against New England Revolution, almost minus 200. LAFC favored at home at a minus 170 against Dynamo. Cascadia, Portland a plus 123 as they fight a suspension and try to minimize a 2-game suspension down to a 1. Seattle's a plus 204, having played in the midweek. San Jose a plus 125, hosting Minnesota United for the late game. Then all caps, favored at home on Sunday afternoon, hosting LAG. All caps SC at a plus 131, LAG at a plus 173. So that's your broadcast plans across the board. Busy for us here at SDH. Busy for all y'all. Make sure that your batteries are charged in your remotes. And it's time for us to get out of here, which means one thing. Jarrett doesn't have to whistle us out because it is a Friday.
Oh, it's Friday.
Yeah, it's a Friday. So Jarrett doesn't have to whistle us out. But we do have this, once again, thanks to our friends on YouTube, because we love YouTube and 96 Rock. Play it safe, everybody. We'll see you out there this weekend. Wherever we see you, enjoy the sports. And we will be back on the SDH Network Sunday from Chattanooga with all the chaos going on and all the divisions, all the stuff. It's all here in the network. So for all of us here, to all of you there, enjoy your weekend. Be safe. Here's the close for the weekend. There's our slate. It just means that I have to find the thing that actually does finish the week. And believe it or not, I'm going to find it sooner or later. Here it is.
You want me to whistle us out?
Was on. the keys on the typewriter had sharp points that kept sticking into our fingers. The dictating equipment started asking us questions, and our beepers sent electric shocks just through our body like a cattle prod. Out in the warehouse, the trucks kept banging into the docks, not even thinking about stopping. Oh, our frail bodies were strapped to the chairs, and our chairs were chained to the desks. Our pleas for justice were ignored, and the end seemed near. But we busted our slave drivers' little bitty balls. We've charged out of their brick fortress. The streets are ours because it's Friday.